Hey everyone, this is John Rollins, and it is Wednesday, the last day of March, March 31. It is time for our weekly S.T.R.I.V.E session. S.T.R.I.V.E, strategies to remain informed, strategies to remain victorious, strategies to remain empowered. I pray that you've had a great week. I'm grateful to those who come and let me know that you have been listening to our sessions. I'm hearing from a lot of people from all across the country who've been sharing that they've been tuning in, and that makes me feel good. So I appreciate it. We probably won't be on that long today, but I do want to share something that I hope will be of some value to you and maybe to those who may be around you. All right, so strive, strategies to remain informed, victorious, and empowered. And our topic today is snakes bite and bees sting. I know you say, John, yeah, that's a given. We got that. All right, give me something good. I don't know if I can give you anything good, but listen to this. These are stories from my life, and I'll tell you where I'm going with this. When I was younger, I'm still young. When I was younger, I was in the Boy Scouts. And I remember one day we went to, I think it was in Magnolia Park. I think it was Magnolia Park. It was Magnolia Go Ahead, but it was one of those parks out east. And I had a fascination with snakes when I was young. And then I don't know if that's I think it's normal behavior for a child. I did my book reports on snakes. I remember I traced the head of a king cobra. I just love the snakes. So so one day we are on this scouting trip and we go into the bathroom. There's a outside bathroom, of course, and on the back of the toilet there was a snake. And so I'm the guy. I'm thinking, man, I love snakes. I think so. I go and grab a stick. My intention was to try to hold the snake down, and I couldn't have been. I doubt that I was 10, but in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to catch the snake. So I go to put my I get a stick. Uh, Stick is probably an overstatement. I get a twig. I get a twig and I reach out to try to hold the snake down, and the snake strikes and bites me on my thumb, not my thumb, my finger, on the knuckle. And that I was not expecting that. So needless to say, I didn't catch the snake that day. I don't know what I did other than went out and I looked at my hand and I saw it was interesting because I had this like little circle, the imprint of the snake's teeth on my knuckle. And so, that's my badge of honor. I'm thinking, wow, that's so cool. Thankfully, it was not a venomous snake. So I, I still am not, I don't think I'm fascinated with them anymore, but I'm still kind of intrigued by them. Just something about them that I think is kind of interesting. Um, but I made an assumption. This is where I'm going with this. I made an assumption about that snake. And the assumption that I made was that the stick that I had was long enough to allow me to control the snake without the snake biting me. Well, my assumption was wrong. All right. Snakes bite, bees sting. Well, let me tell you a story about bees. And you may be thinking, John, you had an interesting childhood. I assure you, I had an interesting childhood. One day, when I was younger again, one of the deacons from my church, he's an entomologist, and he used to have a beehive. And so one day, a few of his children and some of the neighborhood kids came over, and he allowed us to get some honey. So once again, I took a stick, and I think I'm starting to see that pattern here with these sticks. Anyway, I took a stick, I stuck it into the hive and got some honey. I put the honey in my mouth, and then all of a sudden, I felt this sharp pain. Um, on the honey, on the stick, there was a bee, and I put it in my mouth, and it stung me on my tongue. All right. Once again, I made an assumption that there was no bee on the stick. My assumption was wrong. Okay, so we're talking about the times that we make assumptions, and how often do our assumptions impact our lives, either by being a correct assumption or by being an incorrect assumption. And you may not call it an assumption. You may call it something different, may use a different language. You may say something, or you may hear someone say, well, I figured, or well, I imagined, or they may something like, well, I expected, or I anticipated, I hoped, I planned, I thought, I guessed, or you may hear them go to the reverse of that. They can insert a word that would take everything that I just listed, but they make it a false assumption. Okay, I never figured, it would work out like that. Well, I can't imagine, or who could have imagined that that would have been the outcome? Or well, I didn't anticipate, or well, I hope that it would not happen. Well, I failed to plan. I never would have guessed. I never could have guessed. I never would have thought. I didn't think that. And all of these are examples of someone who either made or failed to assume the factors that would lead up to or led to an outcome. And I believe that if I began the statement, many of you will be able to finish it about assuming. Okay, I'm going to try it, and I'm not going to make the statement, but I'm going to start the statement, and then you can complete it in your own home, in your own privacy. Okay. Whenever anybody assumes, you know what they say about assuming? It makes, there you go, you finish it. All right. So now here's what I know. I know that we all make assumptions. I know that we all make assumptions. Okay. However, I don't believe enough people, and in case you missed it, okay, that was a classic case of somebody making an assumption. I made an assumption. All right. But I don't believe enough people give consideration to the following questions. Okay. What are my assumptions? And what if my assumptions are wrong? We all make assumptions, and some people may call them assumptions, other people may call them judgments. Some people go as deep as say, I discerned. But we make assumptions, we make judgments. What are my assumptions? What are my judgments? What are my prejudices, my stereotypes? And what if I'm wrong? Okay, what if what I assumed or did not assume to be the case turned out differently? Okay. What are some assumptions that you make about your job? Right? Do you believe that you have job security? Do you assume that because you work in a stable industry, that your job is going to be there? Do you assume that because you are the senior person on the team, that you are a lock for the next promotion? Do you assume that because your performance evaluations are better than average, that you are going to get that pay raise? And so you base from that pay raise that you anticipate, that you assume that you're going to get, you go out and make the purchase of a new house, a new car, you're making a new investment. Okay. What are your assumptions? What are your assumptions? And what if your assumptions are wrong? What if you don't get the promotion? What if you aren't up for that pay raise? What if that job is not secure? What if the industry, even though the industry is good right now, what if in a few years there's new regulations, new legislations, and all of a sudden that industry that's booming now, that you believe is going to be around forever, becomes outdated? What are your assumptions? And what if your assumptions are wrong? What are the assumptions that you make about your health? Okay. I believe that I'm a pretty healthy person. And so because of that, I probably don't make as much effort to try to protect my health. I used to be diligent about getting me some exercise, getting some cardio in, getting some steps in, building up some muscle, going to my doctor's appointments. Okay, because I just assumed that my health is going to be good. I have good genes. My parents are in good health, and they're both in their 80s. So I just assumed that my health is going to be good. And thank God, up to this point, I've been blessed. I've been in the hospital. I think you all know I mentioned on last week. I just celebrated my 59th birthday. I've been in the hospital two times admitted in the hospital. One was with I broke my leg playing football in high school, and the other I spent one night in the hospital when I had my appendix out. Okay, so other than that, I'm in pretty good health. I don't take any medicines. Okay, but I don't believe that I can continue to not to neglect a, a good health regimen if I want to keep good health. I can't make that assumption that just because I have good genetics that I'm going to be okay. All right. What are some assumptions that you're making about your health? What if those assumptions are wrong? What are some assumptions you're making about your finances? Okay. And guys, I'm talking about me. Okay. And I can talk about John better than I can talk about anybody else. Okay. An assumption that I make about money. I'll always be able to make money. Okay. Why do I assume that? Because that has been my past. I've been in industries, I've been in businesses, I've been in positions, and money has not been an issue for me. It has not been. I make an assumption, but I would tell you that there have been some times when what I assumed to be the case that I could always go out and make it whenever I wanted to, it didn't work out the way that I assumed. All right. So what are some assumptions that you're making about your finance? Some assumptions that you're making about your investments? Do you assume that the market is going to continue to rise, or do you have a plan in place just in case your assumptions are wrong? What are some assumptions that you make about your relationships? Assumptions you make about your children? Okay, man, my children would never do that. I don't know about the kids down the street. I don't know about the kids in the school, but my child, now I know my child will never say, do, think, behave that way. What if you're wrong? What if your assumptions is wrong? What if you're wrong? What if you're playing it safe? What if you're assuming that everything's gonna always continue to work in your favor? Do you have all of your eggs, the proverbial eggs, in one basket? What are your assumptions about your business, about your company, about your future, about the property that you intend to buy and build? And I mean, you want to plan, but I have found it to be a good. I heard someone say this many years ago, and it was one of the books that I was listening to or I was reading. They say you plan for you expect the best, but you prepare for the worst. You expect the great, but you prepare for. You have a plan for just in case things don't work out the way that you assume that they will. All right. Okay. What are your assumptions, and what if your assumptions are wrong? Okay. I'll give you one here. I speak often of this book that I read a lot, and there's a story of some a prisoner who was being sent over to speak with Caesar. He's going to Rome. They put him on a boat with some other people, and he told them, he says, "Guys, I don't think we should be sailing now. I don't think this is a good time for sailing." And so he said, maybe we should hold and just kind of winter here, because if we go, we may run the risk of losing our ship. You may run the risk of losing your cargo. You may run the risk of losing your lives. But what happens is the owner of the ship, the captain of the ship, they assumed that they knew more about what was going on than this guy did. Their assumptions were wrong. They ended up in a storm of storms. They call them nor'easters. And they went for a couple of weeks battling that storm. They lost the cargo. They lost the ship. Now, great, thankfully, God stepped in and they didn't lose their lives. Okay, but they made a wrong assumption. And that could be our outcomes too if we don't give consideration to some of the things that we just assume are going to be the case. Now, fortunately, you don't have to assume. For those of us, and we say this often, the strive sessions, for those of us who are believers, we can go to God in prayer. We can ask Holy Spirit to give us guidance and give us direction, to reveal to us those things that are in our future. So we don't have to go around Well, I thought, well, I hope, well, I plan, well, I guess, I figured. All right. Hey, this is John with the Strive session. Strategies to remain informed, strategies to remain victorious, strategies to remain empowered. All right. And I close the way that I love to close. Thanks for those who joined on. I saw that there were a few people to join in. I close the way that I love to close. If you not had someone to come in and to affirm your greatness, to remind you of your worth, to tell you just how valuable you are, to let you know that if you were not here, their world would not be the same. And I welcome that opportunity to remind you that today, tomorrow, and forever, okay, you, you are important. And don't you ever forget it. All right. Hey guys, this is John. Y'all be blessed. Bye.